Shivakya, Chakshurmilitamena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaः, Shri Chaitanya Manavistava Sthapitamena, Tale Swayam Rupakatamani, Tisvaparatikam, Andeham Kurukshedatkam, Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha, Shri Rupam Savajapam, Sarvana Gurunatam, Tampam, Krishna Param, Sarvana Shri Vishakalatam, Shri Krishna Karnasvidati, Navandajaripate, Upesha Kupika Kanta Katano, Satakachan Korangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Varshabhava Sutri Pranamya Priyo, Chapikotra Vilcha, Prapahasin Dugayacha, Patitana Pami Vishnu Vishnu, Chachi Vishnu Kyaranda, Shri Advaita Vedara Shwari Gauravatanda, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Welcome to this discussion on Bhagavad Gita as it is. I recently understood that one of the videos did not get recorded properly. So that is the video recording of discussion on shloka number 4.35 to 4.38. So I'm doing the re-recording of that. So let's start now. So in this chapter, there are 5 sections. In the 5th section, we have shloka number 35 to 38. We focus slowly on this year now. So let's go to the sloka. Okay, so Yajñatva Punarmoha Evam Yashasi Pandava Ena Bhutani Aseshani Rakshasi Atmani Atomani. Having obtained real knowledge from self-realized soul, you will never fall into such illusion, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. Just a recap, in the previous shloka, which was Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashtena Srevya, Upadikshyanti Tena Jnanina Tattvadarshana. Means we need to approach a spiritual master and go with the aim of understand with him with 3 major things. One is we need to do a submissive inquiry. We have to, and first we have to go with service attitude. Then we have to do a submissive inquiry, and then do service at him, at his lotus feet. Then the knowledge is revealed to us. So that means first we have to show humbleness, inquisitiveness, and then do service to him. Then the knowledge is revealed to us. When that knowledge is revealed to us, what is that knowledge? So that is what Krishna is doing. This is the first verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna talks about his relationship with the living entities. Even you will see that all living entities are part of the Supreme. So in chapter 2, there was a similar shloka, Tani Sarvani Samyamya Yukta Asita Matpada Paseyasendhyani Tasya Pragna Pratishiva. So in this verse 2.67, Krishna asked Arjuna to focus his mind on him. So in chapter 2, though Krishna talks about the soul, he does not explicitly talk about connection of the soul with him, or in this case, Supreme. So now in this shloka, there is one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, fixes his consciousness upon me. He clearly tells here, he's a man of steady intelligence. And there is one more shloka, 3.3. Mahi sarvani karmani sanyasa dhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmama bhutva idyasya virakasura. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship, free from lethargy, fight. Till now, Krishna has not explicitly stated what is the relationship of the soul with Krishna. In this verse, 4.3, Krishna is saying that living entities are his parts. So this is giving the relationship of the soul with Krishna. Further, the knowledge obtained from spiritual master helps us to see the living entity as spirit souls in relationship with Krishna. So our relationship with Krishna is clear only when we take shelter of no, self-realized spiritual master. The point that Krishna is making here is that, oh Arjuna, do not think that you are alone, worried about Bhishma, Drona, and other warriors in the battlefield. Krishna also is worried about all of them because each and every one of them is related to Krishna. So Krishna is concerned about them. And they are all parts and parcels of Krishna. So whatever Krishna is doing is for the ultimate benefit. Thus, Krishna is advising to Arjuna that don't see them as their bodily relatives. Arjuna has to see them as spirit souls related to him. So there are two major impacts of this kind of knowledge. One is that first we get freed from illusion. Now punarmoha. Now punarmoha. So if you go now punarmoha. Yeah. What is punarmoha? We see living entities as parts and parcels of Krishna. And then Drakshasi Atmani Atoma, freedom from illusion and acquisition of spiritual vision, or two results of knowledge obtained from spiritual master. So by doing when we get this, we see every living entity as spiritual parts and parcels of Krishna. The spiritual master is to be qualified. He should be free from illusion. He should be free. He should be able to see the living entities as parts and parcels of Krishna. So there is a beautiful shloka in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.8. Puംsastriyamuttamibhavametam tayo mitapalekanti maho. Atograshekrasutaptavittaye janasya mohoyam ampam. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusion and thinks in terms of height and mind. Principally, the spiritual master should be free from attachment to opposite sex. So by observing this behavior, we can understand if the spiritual master has internalized the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, then attachment for the opposite sex will not be there. So when we follow the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, there must be some change in line with what is described above. What is told here is stage of perfection. However, as a practitioner, we should show a change in us. Due to our surrendering to Krishna and spiritual master, there must be a transformation. A devotee who is initiated by the spiritual master and seriously practicing, the devotee's life will be significantly different from the general people, even general pious people. Devotee's life is centered on Krishna. Now, after describing the freedom from illusion, now punarmohan. So if you see, now punarmohan, Drakshasi Atmani Atom. So after describing, uh, there is a very important point. The devotee's life is centered on Krishna. Then there is clarity in freedom from illusion, and then acquisition of spiritual vision, whereby we are able to see spirit souls as parcels of Krishna. Now there will be one more point which Krishna will be making, which is how this knowledge, this transformation happens, or how this happens. That is what Krishna will tell. You see the Prabhupada's purport. That's an interesting point which he is making. Okay, so the sense of an existence separate from Krishna is called as Maya. Ma means not, Ya means this. Some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, that Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the absolute is impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, this impersonal Brahman is the personal influence of Krishna. So there's one more. So this, when we are taking shelter of spiritual master, we get the spiritual vision that we are all parts and parcels of Krishna. So we come out of Maya. So Prabhupada is trying to describe what the illusion is. And then one more point which Prabhupada is making, even the millions of incarnations are only different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. This thought is material in nature, expansions of Krishna. The Mayavadi philosopher wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in many expansions. This thought is material in nature. We have experienced in the material world that a thing, when fragmentally distributed, loses its original identity, but the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 plus 1 is equal to 1 and 1 minus 1 is also equal to 1. This is the case of absolute. So Prabhupada is trying to explain that Mayavadi philosophy is not okay. Not only should we think that this creation is Krishna or creation as Krishna, but also the various incarnations we should see are also parts of Krishna. This unified vision that everything is connected with Krishna is the result of spiritual knowledge. Then there is one more point which Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, which is the living entities as separate parts and parcels of Supreme have purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten the purpose since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies and animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of transcendental service of the Lord. So, how are we related with Krishna? That is what Prabhupada is mentioning here. We are related to Krishna by in a transcendental service to him. So, because we have come under the influence of Maya, illusion, we think ourselves to be body, and hence we think ourselves separate from Krishna. Okay, so by surrendering to a spiritual master, this illusion goes off, and then we engage in service of Krishna in this material body one. There is a very good shloka, 2.10.6, Nirodha Asyanushay Anushanam Atmana Saha Shakti Mukti Ita Anya Anyata Rupam Swarupena Devastiti Nirodha Asya Shayanam Atmasah Sakti Mukti Itpanyata Rupam Swarupena Vyavastiti. Merging of a living entity along with its conditional living tendency with the mystic line of the Mahavishnu is called as winding up of cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of living entity after it gives up changeable, gross, and material bodies. Principally, this is the definition of liberation. It, so, itva anyata rupam, giving up otherwise form, refers to all material forms like man, woman, Indian, American, and so on. By giving up these forms, one gets situated in the eternal form, which is Swarupena Devastiti. So, liberation means giving up all other forms and situating in one's own eternal form. That is what it is. So let us go to the next shloka, 4.36. Api chedasyapi papebhyaha sarvebhya papakritama sarvanyana plaveneya rajinam santarishyasi. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Now, Krishna is talking about the potency of this process, the spiritual knowledge that you get, and the service that you engage after you are getting this knowledge is has some potency. It's a process. So what is that? That is, even if you are considered to be the most sinful of sinful sinners, when you're situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you'll be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. The key point is not where we are. Key point is where we are looking at. So we may be very sinful. So there are three modes of nature. We can understand our position by understanding the three modes of nature. Three modes of nature is ignorance, passion, and goodness. When we are engaged in devotional service, we move to transcendence. We go beyond the three modes of nature. The traditional Indian life is in mode of goodness, is closer to transcendence. The Western civilization is in mode of passion or ignorance. Many Indians moved from traditional Indian life to Western life. Thus, they moved from mode of goodness to mode of passion and ignorance. So they are looking away from higher levels of higher modes of nature. Thus, where we are is not that important. Where we are looking at is very important. When we focus on material things, we move away to lower modes. So, looking at materialism, sensuality, hope, and hype of enjoyment will drag us away from transcendence. The early disciples of Srila Prabhupada were principally hippies. They were in more of ignorance. They are, they are breaking regulative principles. The only regulative principle was to break all the regulative principles. They had no knowledge of spiritual life. However, they were done with the material enjoyment. They were looking for spirituality. They were born and brought up in a material culture. They were fed up with the material culture. In the hope of rising higher, they were misled into drugs. They were going actually downwards. However, they were always looking something on the higher side or the upwards. They were hoping that with this they would go up, but they were going down. With this means with the drugs they would go up, but they were going down. Though they were in mode of ignorance, they were looking towards spirituality. They were intrigued by the idea of spirituality. When Srila Prabhupada presented Krishna consciousness, they were fascinated by the idea. They practiced it meticulously and progressed very swiftly. They became exalted devotees. The point here is that if someone wants to get fixed in transcendental message, then that person can get elevated. There is a logical paradox presented in this verse. The principle is that anyone can get elevated. If one gets elevated, one wants to get elevated. The logical paradox is that if someone is sinful, then how can he be knowledgeable? How can he get aboard the boat of transcendental knowledge? Not the person who is knowledgeable is not sinful. Krishna is talking about most sinful among sinful people. How can such people move into the boat of transcendental knowledge? So Acharyas have explained that this is a rhetorical statement. It is not that sinful people are knowledgeable or knowledgeable people are sinful. This is a rhetorical glorification. This knowledge is so powerful that even if the person is sinful, the person will get elevated. If person chooses to live according to the knowledge, he would get elevated. From the practical point of view, the rhetorical glorification is reality as well. How? This is by the intervening mercy of a spiritual master. This mercy goes to the conditioned souls. Even if they are sinful, if they are attracted to Krishna some way, then that attraction can elevate them. In case of Karma Yogi, attaining jnana, in a case of Karma Yogi, this is a jnana. This is a rhetorical verse. So, but considering the case of Bhakti Yogi, any person can get elevated. not just karma yogi getting elevated to jnana yogi. This is the glory of the transcendental knowledge. Here, the word boat is used by Krishna to mean knowledge. We see that boat is used to refer to lotus feet of Krishna, or we use to mean it human body. The boat enables us to get out of this ocean. Just having a human body is not enough to get out of the ocean. We need to use the human body for Krishna service. This starts with the directing the boat in the right direction. The right direction is we get from the, which is the right knowledge. We get that information from transcendental knowledge. Both human body and transcendental knowledge are essential for crossing the material existence. The human form helps us to understand the spirituality. The spiritual knowledge should be able to help the human form to take up to Krishna consciousness. Krishna is talking about this knowledge here, this knowledge which helps us to understand our constitutional position in relationship with Krishna. Now, if you see the purport, proper understanding of one's constitutional position in relation to Krishna is so nice that it can at once lift one from struggle for existence, goes on in a which goes on in a ocean of misery. This material world is sometimes regarded as an ocean of misery and sometimes as blazing forest. In ocean, however expert a swimmer may be, the struggle for existence is very severe. If someone comes forward and lifts from the struggling swimmer from the ocean, he is the greatest to say. Perfect knowledge received from Supreme Personality of Godhead is the path of liberation. The boat of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but at the same time, most sublime. So even an expert swimmer uh, requires a boat. If there's too much turbulence in the sea, in the ocean, then boat is definitely required. So spiritual knowledge is important. ISKCON is a boat that Srila Prabhupada has brought in our. All of us can on board the boat and get rescued and go back home, back to Krishna. There may be disputes, conflicts, disasters within the society, but we should stay put. Being in the boat is much better than being in the ocean. Being in association of devotees, practicing sadhana is much better than staying in material society. This is the safest way to go back to Krishna. So next verse is also very interesting. Krishna will give one more example of how transcendental knowledge purifies and liberates us. Let's go to the shloka. Yataidansi samito agni basmasat kurute arjuna jnana agni sarva karmani basmasat kurute tata. That means, as the blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burns to ashes all reactions to material activities. In the previous verse, we were talking about the boat of transcendental knowledge, which will rescue us from the lower modes to the higher modes and take us back to Krishna. Here, it is told that all the karmic reactions are burnt by the power of the knowledge. So Krishna here is referring to a person who does not get karmically bound. Krishna has used the same word here in 4.19. If you read 4.19, Yasya Syarve Samarambha Kama Sankalpa Vachita Jnana Adhi Dagda Karma Kamaho Panditam. He said by sages to be worker for whose reactions of work have been burned by the fire of perfect knowledge. So fire of knowledge burns the reactions of work. Okay. So if you see the translation, yeah, so we saw the translation. So the firewood is burned. When we are chanting, the entire karmic reactions which are responsible for binding us down in the material world are completely burned. So in this verse 4.37, we see that Jnana Nita 4.19, which is Jnanadi Datta Karmani. Karmana, Jnanadi Datta Karmana. And 4.37, Jnanadi Sarva Karmani. So it is referred to a person whose reactions are burned down by the fire of knowledge. Same point is made in both 4.37 and 4.19. Further, there is one more point referred here. The knowledge which disciple acquires from the spiritual master is like a fire. This fire burns to ashes all the reactions of material activities. The karma is referred to as seed in shastras. These seeds are burned to ashes by the fire of transcendental knowledge. So in 4.36 and 4.37, two examples are coming. One is that this material world is an ocean, and this spiritual knowledge is a boat to get out of it. Two, the spiritual knowledge is like fire, which burns to ashes the sinful reactions. This is referring to anarthas, wrong desires inside us, which have no value. There are no meaning to it, or they are meaningless activities. And all this is clear, the water still remains, but we come out of it. This example of firewood is distinct from the boat in that the ocean in that firewood distinct from the boat in the ocean. Because how it is distinct in firewood, the fire completely burns the firewood and simplifying, signifying that the karma gets completely destroyed. This is supremely auspicious. Srila Prabhupada talks about the stages of karmic reactions. We will discuss this in much elaborate in 9th chapter, but you can go through the courses. Prabhupada is talking about how there are different reactions. Perfect knowledge of self and superself and of their relationship is compared here into fire. Fire not only burns up all reactions of impious activities, but also reacts of pious activities, turning them to ashes. There are many stages of reaction. Reaction in making, reaction in fructifying, reaction already achieved, reaction a priori. But knowledge of constitutional position on living entity burns everything to ashes. When one is in complete knowledge, all reaction, both a priori and a posteriori, are consumed. In Vedas, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.4.20 Vaisa Ete Karati Amrita Saga Asaduni. One word comes both pious and impious reactions of what come. So we will discuss this in elaborate in chapter 9. Let us go to shloka number 4.38. नाहि ज्ञानेन सदृशं पवित्रं यः विद्यते तत् स्वयं योगसामसिद्धः कालेनात्मनि विन्दति. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is mature field of mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. In this verse, Krishna is talking about purity and potency of the spiritual knowledge. Nahi jnanena sadrisha. Sadrisha means no comparison for spiritual knowledge. Pavitram iha vidyate. There is nothing as purifying as the transcendental knowledge. That's Swayam Yoga Samasiddha. And someone is situated in that yoga. What happens? Samsiddha, then someone is matured or perfected in yoga. That's Swayam Yoga Samasiddha. Kalena Atmani Vindati. Such a person delights in himself over a period of time. So Pavitram here Vidyate. Krishna is talking about two examples in this session. One is the boat example, another one is the fire. Then he is concluding the section by a generic statement that there is nothing as pure as knowledge. So knowledge is able to burn the burn the karmic reactions because it is pure. What is this knowledge about? This knowledge is about Atma and its relationship with Krishna. This Krishna not told explicitly, However, it tells that the result that we get from this knowledge is that we get free from karmic bondage. So that is the purity of the soul. The result is liberation from material miseries and going back home, back to God. This knowledge will be talked about by Krishna in 7th and 9th chapter in elaborate. Here, Krishna is glorifying the knowledge that we get by practicing sadhana and the process given by the spiritual master. The knowledge is pure. So in the 9th chapter, Krishna will glorify this knowledge again. He will say that Raja Vidya, Raja Gogya, Pavitram Vidyate, Pavitram Idamuttamam, Pratyaksha Avagam Sushukam Kartum Abhyam. This knowledge is king of knowledge, Raja Vidya, Raja Gogya, and is the most secret of all secret. It is the purest knowledge, Pavitra. And because it is direct perception of self by self-realization. Self-realization means Pratyaksha Avagam Dharma. It is perfection of religion. So it is the best of Dharma, the principle of religion. It is everlasting, Avyaya, and it is joyfully covered. Sushukam Kartu Avyaya. It is done joyfully. Sushukam. So in this sloka, we see that there is nothing as pure as spiritual knowledge. Krishna uses all superlative terms. Pavitram, Uttamam, Pratyakshavadamam, Dharmyam, Sushukam Kartum Abhyayam. So all these are, this sloka is talking about everything in superlative terms. Therefore, this is the important of spiritual knowledge, which burns to ashes all our karmic reactions. And by gaining this knowledge, we are in the boat in this ocean of material miseries and safe from the ocean of material miseries. And gradually we move towards Krishna, safe towards Krishna in that boat. So that is how we understand it. We'll stop the discussion here. Thank you very much. Achanti Patrabhesha, Prakasan Duvayacha, Patitanam Pavnavyo, Vishnavyo, Namo Namaha, Tanta Shloka Gita Ki Jai, Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anta Koti Vaishnava Jai, Guru Premanandi Hari, Krishna Krishna.